I'm pretty hopeful for the future of beer, and I think that in terms of a trend that I would like to see happen is closely related to lagers, and that is beer-flavored beer.
Gosh, who'd have thought of that? Hello and welcome to the Gourmet Brewing Podcast. This season, we're learning from leading brewers about their delicious beverages, but more importantly, how they created them. I'm your host, Doug Piper, Cicerone, speaker, and international food and beverage judge. Today's featured guest is Bill Covaleski, the co-founder of Victory Brewing. Bill has been a hugely successful brewer, having created Victory Brewing with his friend Ron Barchet. Then in 2016, they teamed up with New York's Southern Tier Brewery, which led to the forming of Artisanal Brewing Ventures. Later, he added 6 Point Brew, as well as Bold Rock Ciders, to round out their offering. Now listen, if you've learned anything new while watching this video, or you just like it, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, especially the notification bell, because your views, your comments, all your feedback help the channel out immensely. Now, during our 16-minute interview, we discussed why lagers are a growing trend, but seltzers are not. Why beer-flavored beer is important, but we also at the same time need to meet our customers' expectation. So let's join our discussion as Bill shares his thoughts on why he believes lagers are an important and growing market segment. Bill!
Hey, Doug.
Boy, finally get to meet you in person.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. We had to make it happen in Pittsburgh, of all places.
We did. But it's interesting. I've never been to Pittsburgh before.
Really?
No, it's
okay.
my first trip.
Well, I think you brought us good weather here for HomebrewCon.
I've been telling my wife that. She said they're sweltering down in the Carolinas.
Yeah. Well, we typically get sweltering this time of year, but welcome.
Well, thank you. Well,
what do you want to talk about today?
Well, first of all, congratulations being the keynote speaker for HomebrewCon.
Well, to be fair, one of 3, and I don't mind batting cleanup. It was a perfect opportunity, and I think I had a hopeful message to keep everybody inspired and brewing forward, brewing dreams, brewing memories.
Well, I loved your story because you walked through your relationship with your dad and your introduction to brewing and how it has taken you where you are. And one of the best comments that you made that I loved, growing up in the Carolinas, bars were grungy and neon signs and dark and smoky. Yeah. And when I went to Europe, they were quite different. So that really, in that moment, inspired you, is what I'm hearing.
It did inspire me. And, I think that Ron and I were more interested, my brewing partner, were more interested in making the flavors of the beer, right? That's what the home brewers and the professional brewers geek out over.
Yep.
But as I pointed out in my talk, when you successfully do that, people come together and enjoy that. And then they talk and they experience, and all this adds up to a memory. But you're more likely to make a positive memory in a positive environment. Neon lit, smoky, dirty, those are the things you'll want to forget, not remember.
Yeah.
And so it was in the beer gardens when Ron and I took our first trip in 1987 to Belgium and Germany and got outdoors and saw the way people were experiencing it. And I guess the other thing that I would point out is once we did open Victory in Downingtown, 1996, had our tap room, I had this vision watching people bring in all their babies, because babies did well in our tap room because it was so noisy. They were kind of drowned out. They could carry on and do whatever they wanted. And
I've never looked at it that way.
But it just struck me how many people brought children and babies into the place. And I said, you know what? There may be a point down the road where there's a generation of people, beer drinking age, that no longer think, if you ask them where is a brewery, they don't say Milwaukee, they don't say St. Louis, they don't say Munich, they don't say Amsterdam. They go like, breweries are everywhere. They're in my hometown.
Yeah.
And guess what? We got there. That's pretty cool.
And I love it. And I think it has changed the United States in so many positive ways. Well, speaking of that change, there seems to be a shift in beer tasting. I know that GABF, there were way more more lagers
Right.
entered. I was talking to Charlie Papazian. I asked Charlie about trends. And Charlie says, I think it's going to be lagers.
Right.
He also lamented over Selzers, but we'll not digress there. Your Prima Pils. Your Prima Pils.
Yeah.
So we're talking about lagers, and the Pilsners, I like what a friend told me. He said, I believe a brewery's business card is their lager.
Ooh, that's a good statement.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
That came from Tobias Zolo at Weinstefaner.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that. Yeah. So your Prima Pils, tell me about it. What is it about that made it so iconic?
I guess because it was a Pilsner that was pushing the bounds a little bit, right? I mean, Prima is, the IBUs are now settled in at 42, 43, which isn't too aggressive. But at the time when it hit the scene, it was above where most Pilsners would be.
Right.
So it was classic in all other aspects, but we really wanted it to have an additional American emphasis on hops, probably because we were also very cognizant of what was going on in IPAs. Americans liked hops. Now, the funny thing we saw with Prima is people would say, I don't like hoppy beers, if they tried our Hop Devil. We'd pour them a Prima, not that much less bitter, and be like, yeah, that one's good. So we learned that our audience perceives European and American hops quite differently, and of course they do. They hit the palate so different.
Yeah.
So not everyone knows how to articulate what hoppy means. They're confusing it with just straight up bitterness. So I think that Prima was an assertive, memorable beer, but it hit on familiar hop flavors for some people, and it was amped up just a little bit. So I think it fell into that comfortable zone of someone who was more familiar with the continental lager, but wow, this one's really got flavor. This must really be fresh. So I think we got lucky in that respect. To Tobias's point, brewers worldwide think Victory makes tons of Prima Pils. And they're often dismayed to be like, no, that's actually lower on the list. We do a whole lot of Golden Monkey. And they're like, Golden Monkey?
I like that Golden Monkey.
Sure.
I like that one too.
But Tobias's point about it being your calling card or your signature, everybody knows. I mean, everybody in the profession seems to know us for Prima Pils. So that feels good.
So you kind of started Prima Pils before lagers were cool.
Yeah.
I mean, the craft lagers.
Craft lagers, for sure.
So now that you see them coming maybe back, at least if Charlie's right and GABF entries are right, what do you think of that? How do you think that's going to impact the industry going forward? Because that's a pretty big shift for a lot of brewers that are primarily ale brewers.
This is true, but I mean, I guess it's a positive trend because we're listening to our audience. We always have to listen to our audience. Speaking of making lagers, my first class at Dolman's, the professor banged on the table and said, if the audience wants beer with foam at the bottom of the glass, we must learn to make foam at the bottom of the glass. So
I like
we
that.
do have to follow the leads that our audience makes. If breweries that were making a lot of ales are seeing slower sales because they have more local competition eating into them, and I think that's kind of our reality. We're growing breweries more than we're growing an audience. Then they'll have time to make lager beers, and they should take that opportunity to do so. Meanwhile, I see where taproom brewers find it a good idea because, a refined lager really does best right at where it's brewed. So I think that lagers are going to continue to have a tailwind in the taproom brewery environment because they show well there. Charlie's got some very hopeful ideas. I think he's right for two other reasons. One would be that lagers, again, it falls back on what I was just saying about the taprooms, because more people are drinking at a brewery tap room, they're going to show well there. So people are going to get a positive impression and they're going to be refreshed by it. The other one is kind of a bigger picture thing that dawned on me years ago. And when you go back to Victory opened in 1996, when you go back to earlier days around those times, the battlefield of beer had like 3 major brewers down on one end surveying the field with their arms folded. And then you had these upstarts like Ken Grossman and Jim Cook and Bert Grant on the other end of the field, really looking like the underdogs. But at the same time, they had even a more defiant stance. They wanted to win the game too.
They were rebels.
And if you look at what has happened since those early 90s, each side has been inspired by the other side to move a little bit more to the middle without compromising themselves.
Right.
So the fact of the matter is there's a middle ground where beer is not necessarily defined as craft or industrial. It's just high quality and delicious. And that's, I think, the domain of lager. So I think the future looks good for lager.
Any other trends you think, because you have watched this develop, what do you think the future of seltzers are?
I think seltzers are going to find themselves a little bit boxed in. I think they're going to continue to diminish traditional light beer, right? Because I have daughters 21 and 24. They don't tell me they want to drink beer or beer flavored water.
Mine are the same.
Unfortunately. They have specific flavors in mind that they're looking for.
But I will have to say it's seasonal for them.
Okay.
They only want a seltzer during the summer.
Okay.
And then in the winter, but they have other things. If it's not wine, it is fine beer.
Okay. Yeah, and I'd say that's my girls as well. I guess the important thing is they're focused on a flavor. The problem with, and I know we're talking about seltzer, but the problem with beer for a emerging younger drinker is that their life has been sort of defined by flavor. A Starbucks caramel macchiato, you know exactly what that's tasting like. Whereas a double dry hopped IPA, you're going to say, oh, well, there's pine notes to it. There's also this tangerine. And then you got this juicy pineapple overlay. That's way too complex for most younger drinkers to select because they don't know exactly which one of those things they're getting. But if you were to say it's a pineapple alcohol delivery liquid, you're like, okay, I like pineapple.
Okay.
So well, I think seltzers are going to remain robust with emerging drinkers that are looking for flavor definition, and that's going to continue to cost traditional light beer.
But how do we attract that younger audience? Do we need seltzers in the tap room? And to be relevant, to listen to your customers, as Doman's taught you?
Right. Great point. I'm not sure it has to be in the seltzer format, though. I think that lighter-bodied, effervescent, there's ways to get there through beer, but give more definition to the way you position the beer so that the customer has some flavor touch points to latch onto.
Well, that brings me to another point. Charlie Bamsforth spoke on nutrition of beer. So what do you think the nutrition is if we had a glass of seltzer or a glass of, let's say like a light beer? Just what's the nutritional value since our younger customers are drawn to nutrition and they're going to seltzers for nutritional reasons?
Yeah. Well, they're going to seltzers really for lower carbs and lower calories, right? I mean, so that's not truly nutrition. They're not getting nutritional value. They're getting less out of that. So that is a positive story about beer. You're actually getting more vitamins and enzymes into your system. So that's
as an industry, should we be promoting that more? I know we can't sell it as a health beverage, but
yeah, as an industry, we should be talking about the natural roots of this.
Yeah. 4
main ingredients, some real nutritional attributes.
So our trends that we're looking at, you do believe they're more lagers?
I believe.
You think seltzers will hold their own?
I think they'll hold their own, and again, to the detriment of traditional American light beer.
So what do you hope for in the future, just as we look forward with your perspective?
Yeah.
Well, now that we hope we're post-COVID, we're at least getting better.
Right.
And there's a lot of shakeout in the industry.
Sure.
What do you think?
I think that we're healthy in that people are traveling. People want to get back to the physical contact, real experiences. And beer is a great part for me of real experience. I'm pretty hopeful for the future of beer. And I think that in terms of a trend that I would like to see happen is closely related to lagers, and that is beer-flavored beer.
Gosh, who'd have thought of that?
Well, the reason
is that lager?
No, the reason I say it to you, I think it's lager, but it can be traditional ales as well. I mean, we could be talking about ESBs and golden ales, and
you're saying malt forward?
Malt, not necessarily malt.
See, I'm trying to get back to that flavor profile that you were talking about.
Yeah, let me explain to you what I see the opportunity and the problem as being. Hazy, juicy IPA have been so fruit forward in their palate, which is not a problem, except for the fact you realize that cocktails are very fruity and juicy. Many.
Oh, wow.
And
wines
are very fruity.
Of course.
In a weird way, we have evolved beer from a simple golden liquid that was fit in one little bucket, very little spectrum. We blew that spectrum so wide open that we've created for distillers and vintners an audience that's readily available to jump to a different alcohol product. So I think that the healthiest thing we can do as an industry is invest more time in making beer-flavored beer and speaking about the attributes of that beer.
Okay, so give me that flavor profile. What is beer-flavored beer?
Beer-flavored beer is straight-up Pilsner. Now, we can maybe soften the hops a little bit to get the younger drinker.
So we're saying an even malt and hop balance.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
So, but
defend beer maybe is more what I'm saying, because again, I feel like we've pushed the spectrum of what is accepted as beer in great directions, exciting directions, but at the potential loss of people that entered beer and they found something equally compelling in another alcohol beverage.
I'm still wanting to nail down that flavor profile. Bitterness. Where would you put beer-flavored beer bitterness levels?
It depends on the body of the beer and the style of the beer. That's a tough one to nail down.
So it can be beer flavored and have a wide variety of bitterness.
Yeah,
and
it's almost,
is what I'm hearing.
I guess the better way to phrase it, Doug, is to talk about reinvesting in traditional styles and modernizing them for an audience.
That is super clear. I like that. Now, that's a definition I can get behind.
And in a weird way, that's what Victory's been doing forever, you know? So we're hanging tough in there, right?
Yeah.
We're seeing good results.
I'm seeing it more in the grocery store and down in the South.
Oh.
I didn't used to. Matter of fact, that's how we got in contact with each other. I was looking for Prima Pils.
Right.
I couldn't find it in the grocery store. And I appreciate you sending those to me.
Well, you know, I don't ever want to see someone going thirsty for lack of Prima Pils.
But that's trauma. Now it's in the grocery stores. I see it all the time, even on sale. which good for everybody. Yeah, that's good for everybody. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.
You're actually heading to your tap room right here in Pittsburgh, right?
I will be, yeah. So Southern Tier tap room is on the North Shore. It's actually right over our shoulder if we swam. And yeah, I'm heading there to enjoy some delicious beers. Victory is there, Bold Rock is there, Southern Tier is there, and 6 Point, all the brands in the family.
You wondered where to go. Okay. My cameraman back there, Steve Morgan, he's saying he knows
up from Steve.
Yeah. Well, great. Thank you so much. We hope to see you there.
Great.
Appreciate it, Bill.